There was no eureka moment. No equivalent of Archimedes jumping out of the bathtub and running down the street naked shouting, "Eureka!" If I had had such a moment of realization, it would not have been a celebration. Instead, over time, I was confronted with study after study that contradicted what I thought was true about nutrition. The first food that I knew without a doubt that I was wrong about was lentils. I thought we should avoid them because of the lectins. And then I was reading this collection of studies showing just how phenomenal the fiber and polyphenols in lentils are for supporting a healthy gut microbiome. Studies showing that eating legumes like lentils lowers inflammation, reduces cardiovascular disease risk of type 2 diabetes, risk of some forms of cancer, and pretty impressively lowers all-cause mortality. Here I was, scared to eat a food, but reading science showing me that that food is unequivocally good for me. Next was chickpeas, and then beans more broadly, then oats and corn and rice. Tomatoes being anti-inflammatory threw me for a loop. One food at a time over the course of several years, facing my confirmation bias and realizing that I was wrong. And that the way I had been taught by other scientists and doctors to think about food was wrong. It's a logical fallacy that just because a food has something in it that's potentially inflammatory, or a hormone disruptor, or that somehow negatively impacts the health of the gut, that means that that food is a problem. But in reality, foods are chemically complex, and we're compensated by a collection of nutrients. One compound that's inflammatory and a whole collection of compounds that's anti-inflammatory. So the net effect is lowering inflammation. One compound that negatively impacts the health of the gut and a collection of compounds that improve it. You can't look at the effects of one chemical in a food and think that that represents the health effect of the whole food. You can't look at how the whole food affects one biological system and think that that is the effect on the whole body. So I changed how I look at food. I changed my criteria. I changed the types of studies I was reading. I changed my mind. And if you've been following me for a long time, you know I've been talking about this for a long time. Long before I changed my stance on the more controversial nutrition topics, like organic foods and vegetable oils, eventually there was a critical mass of foods that I was adding back into my diet as a result of the science I was reading, that I knew that I had been wrong about and could no longer stand behind my old communication about those foods. And I knew it was time to leave the restrictive diet community that I used to belong to. Build something new where I was no longer constrained by diet dogma, so that I could talk about the health benefits of lentils without having the pushback that, well, lentils have lectins. And that's why I built Nutrivore, a dietary philosophy focused on getting all of the nutrients our bodies need from the foods we eat, that considers first and foremost the many, many nutritive compounds in foods responsible for the net benefit of that food, even if it also contains a chemical that is not awesome. The sort of anti-diet default mode psychology of Nutrivore, that came later. As I was building Nutrivore and facing my food fears and expanding my diet, transitioning to evidence-based recommendations, I had to think about what made me susceptible to all of that nutrition misinformation in the first place. What made me buy into that logical fallacy? And it was having a personal health history of being morbidly obese, and the experience of weight discrimination, fat phobia, trying every single diet to lose weight, losing 100 pounds and then gaining it all back again with interest. This is the third time I have lost 100 or more pounds. And I think with Nutrivore, this time it will finally stick, I hope. But that desperation to look what society is telling me has more value, that desperation for a dietary solution, simple rules and everything will be magic, unicorns and rainbows. That's why I believed it, and I wanted to help others, so that's why I espoused it. There was no one moment where I realized I was wrong about all of these different things. Thankfully, I don't think that would have been a happy time, but it's because of that experience that I communicate Nutrivore the way I do. The reason why when I bust myths, I bring every single scientific citation, but also communicate positively with understanding and compassion, because I've been there.